You're listening to the one and only Dog Show. Your hosts, Troop Brinson and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
Welcome, dog fans, to the one and only Dog Show with Troop and Smooch. And we just wanted to send you folks a little quick hitter between episodes this week because we're still working on some Mike Bobo or we talk about it's Bobo's fault, the offensive struggles. But me and Smooch just wanted to get on the air and give you feed the baby birds, right?
Feed the baby birds. You know, sometimes without getting too much into it, you know, life gets involved. And so the 3-part series is kind of on a little pause as one third of us take care of a few things. And so anyway, we did not want to leave you guys without. So we're just giving you a quick hitter. This is a conversation Troop and I have been having, and you're about to hear it in this episode. So great to be here. Let's jump right in, man.
And we do appreciate all the feedback on that first episode on Bobo's fault. And like Smooch said, the second one will be coming out very soon in the next few days. But we wanted to talk a little bit about, we know that Carson Beck did take a bag, and he should have, based on what he could make in the NFL right now. He should probably take that money that Miami was offering, and he did. He's down there going to have a great time on South Beach, it looks like. And but that leaves Georgia. We're going to briefly talk about what it leaves Georgia. And the other thing that we could have made a whole episode about, not just Bobo, but about Stacey Searles, because a lot of folks were very unhappy with the offensive line's performance this year. But just so you know, just if you follow Georgia football, you know who was the offensive line coach before Searles, and that was Matt Luke. Matt Luke was not the recruiter, and he could not follow the pace and the regiment that Coach Smart he requires to be on this staff. And that put Georgia in a lot of roster-wise on that offensive line. And some bad situation. They got players, but not to the level that they're used to. And Searles has signed a couple of good classes, and we'll see what he does with them. But sometimes, Smooch, you have to. Yes. Sometimes it's the players take accountability. I would think at this level, players have to be very accountable to you. You can't always just say, "Well, coach did this, coach did that, and it's his fault." And we're going to pin the blame on Searles. We're going to talk about what's left at the offensive line and what's in the quarterback room as well.
On that, Troop Brinson, you can listen to our reactionary fans. Hey, we love you. You're great listeners. We love talking about it and hearing from you in the comments on our stuff all the time. But you can look at teams that make knee-jerk reactions on coaches. Those are teams that never get it done and never get over the hump. Teams that are elite and that are perennially competing for a national championship, they usually allow an assistant coach to at least coach his players. In other words, be around long enough to bring in recruiting class after recruiting class until the product is what he has recruited. That is something you have to afford Searles. We have to afford him that. I do not think you pull the plug this soon. We've seen his ability to recruit as an improvement over Matt Luke. And I know we need one place to put the blame, but Ernest Green, Stacey Searles did not miss that block that Ernest Green did and get Gunner sack fumbled. He just didn't.
Or Monroe Freeling.
Was it Monroe Freeling? Did I get
Monroe Freeling? He missed three huge blocks to get that he got his quarterback tagged. As I rewatched that game, there were three misplays by Freeling who got his quarterback just absolutely tagged. But let's first talk about the quarterback situation and Gunner Stockton. It looks like Ryan Puglisi, your top two quarterbacks. And I think we were very pleased with what we saw from Gunner. He will learn the pocket presence and some of those things, I think, and get more comfortable with the offense in terms of pulling those triggers and getting the team in the right plays.
That's it.
But we saw a very good ability to pass the ball, and he delivered it on time with velocity, and we just didn't always see that in the little moments that we've seen Gunner in the past. And so he showed you some of those things he can do. I will say this, and we were talking about it off air, that I keep hearing – of course, one of the major weaknesses for Gunner is he has a prolonged release as it's not even the release, it's the build up, it's the wind up, so to speak. It's that first part of it where he's loading the pass. And some quarterbacks don't have to do that. They don't have to load that way. But so many people are saying, well, we can get him to fix that and he's going to be great. That's all we got to do, get him to change that. Folks, do you think he just started being coached this year?
Right.
He's been having quarterback coaches and training since ninth grade, 10th grade in high school, where they identified him as a special player. They knew this is not the beginning of an issue for him. They've worked to try to clean this up over the years. And at this point, this is his delivery. And
that's right. Yeah.
You're going to sink or swim with it. Well, that's just what it is.
That's what I was thinking. So, Troop, our listeners might not know this, but Troop, you've coached baseball at a high level. You've got a son that was a fabulous baseball player. So, what did you see when you saw a kid that needed work? And these are much younger, right? Nowhere near the finished product that, say, a Gunnar Stockton is, but kids in their teens. How easy was it to change a delivery? Did it happen in an off season?
Well, the thing is that it's a process, and you have players that have potential and have especially swings and throws, or throwing is really similar in terms of the mechanics. But there is a huge risk. I mean, if you got a player who says, "Yeah, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, coach," and he works with you every day, there's a risk that if you change something, he may not come out the same player he was. And so you may change you may think you're changing something that's going to make him better, but some things just don't translate that way. And it's not that simple. And it's a long process to retraining someone in these movement patterns. And once you do that, like I said, what about a pitcher? If you take 5 miles off his fastball and just because you wanted to change something to make it look cleaner and prettier, you just ruin that player, and that happens. And so you got to be really careful when you set out to tweak these things, whether you can do it and maintain the athleticism and the freedom of movement that they have, that they've learned, or that's just the way their body moves.
Yeah.
And so it's not as simple, folks, as just saying, we got to clean this up and quicken his release. If it was going to happen, it would already have happened. He's a step away from the NFL if he's going to be
football is what his life is. His life is football. It's not like, no one's noticed this until right now. Light bulb, let's just change everything and how I throw the ball.
Yeah. So, and there have been some players at a high level who have made changes, but it's not the norm to make those kind of changes. It happens. You can point to a player here or there who were able to do it. But I would say, looking at him, I'd be surprised if he could do it and not just have a whole new delivery. Just don't count on that. They can work around that. It may cost them sometimes. He may, like you said, some of those sack fumbles, that may be a risk, because I see quarterbacks all the time get rid of the ball in the nick of time, right before they get hit. And if it takes a split second longer, that ball is still back here. It's one of those things, but you just have to live with that at this point. And I think Georgia is fine with that. But just kind of giving you guys a heads up on that kind of mechanical change. Yeah.
The one thing I noticed, Troop, in watching Gunnar is there's no doubt in him. He is confident. He loves throwing the ball. He's confident making every throw. And as he matures, he'll make the right throw more often. But what you look for is just that belief in self. And he has it. He's got the belief in his ability to throw it, his ability to run, his ability to read. And there just did not seem to be he had moments where he looked like he hadn't been the starting quarterback all year. But when it came time to step up and make some high level throws, he didn't shy away from it. That's what I noticed.
Yep, and giving him a full off season, being QB1, getting all those snaps and knowing it's his job. It's going to make a huge difference for him as well, and for the team, for the starters. He's going to be working with all those guys and not working with the second team, the third team. He's going to get all those all the time to gel with those guys as well. I'm excited to see Puglisi. We didn't get to see him in the spring game this past year because he was injured.
Right,
but he's another high upside, high level passer. And I heard him saying he was with Cade Brock, I think, doing a little fishing thing, and on YouTube, and he said he threw like 96 miles per hour a baseball in high school. I'm like, he's got a cannon, and he's built really. You can see how stout he's built in the lower body, just big thick legs and a big butt. He's built like a frontline pitcher, and so I'm excited to see what he does, and he should provide some competition for Gunnar. and give Georgia a little safety net. And I'll hope to see him play some too and develop his game.
Yeah, Puglisi, I should say, has that arm talent that you salivate over. I remember this is way back before it was in the earlier days of our show and before anyone even knew the name Puglisi. I can remember our contributor, Scott Fitzgerald, coming to us and saying, hey, there's the kid, he was only a 3. He had just been named a 3-star. That's how long ago this was. There's this 3-star kid from up north, Georgia's looking to bring in. They've already offered him, and he has an absolute cannon. And in the little videos and little shorts that you've seen, you see that type of effortless arm talent where the ball explodes out of his hand. And so, yeah, that's a huge upside player right behind Gunner to push. And then also to give the coaches the freedom to let Gunner play the way Gunner wants to play. The backup quarterback plays a large role in how much they take the leash off Gunner and let him be Gunner, because you can't live in fear of what is next on the roster at that position.
Yep. And so the offensive line is, to me, the hinge point that affected Georgia's season the most this year. And I felt if the offensive line would have played up to the standard that we expected them to going into the year, Georgia's offense would have been much, much better. And it just never really got going. It were times when they made some changes and Freeling came in for Green that for 2 or 3 games, they looked better and they started to get some rhythm, but they weren't able to maintain it. You saw against Notre Dame, if the line plays to their standard against Notre Dame, Georgia's possibly still maybe playing next week for the championship.
Right.
But just could not. They just struggled all season. And a lot of those guys, Smooch, are headed out, have declared you losing. How many players you losing? Your center and Jared Wilson. You're losing Fairchild, your guard. Who else we losing? Tate Ratledge. Those are 3 guys you're losing right there.
That's a major leader, yes.
And so Georgia's going to bring back. Looks like Drew Bobo's in line to have the play center. I don't know who will be backing him up. That's something to think about. Yeah. And Coach always worries about who's playing backup center, so we can talk about it later.
He does.
And then you got, of course, that guard you got. Looks like Michael Morris has got a great chance to start at one of those guard positions. And the other guard I keep hearing about is possibly Daniel Calhoun, who has got a high upside, and he should be in line for one of those other guard positions. And we talked about one of the tackles who had such a poor season this year. A lot of it was because of injury, but not just because of that, was Ernest Green. And he got displaced after a time, and Freeling just took over and had a pretty good season. But Green, some people are saying maybe Green plays guard. And if he doesn't play guard, he's probably going to play tackle on the other side again from Monroe Freeling.
There's a parallel there between the role that Truss played Truss is another one. The role that Truss played this past year, we didn't know where he would fit, and we were frustrated with him at times the year before, and he came back and again had an up and down year. There's kind of a similar thing around Ernest Green right now, that same type of feeling with him coming back. Like, what direction is this going to go?
But yeah, he has huge upside, and he had shown it until this year. And like I said, maybe some things were going on. Who knows? There were some injury issues with him as well, but he just got to play better. If he wants to get his career trajectory back on track, Ernest Green needs to have a sensational offseason and come back. And that would make such a huge difference because Georgia struggled at tackle all year long. Truss was just what he is. And Truss was a huge human, and Georgia got the best they could out of him. He kind of took turns making boneheaded plays and missing his assignment. And that was just something Georgia had to live with Truss this year. He did a lot of good things for Georgia, and he's a dog through and through. And he put in the work, a lot of hard work. So we appreciate what he did, but he was just never able to be a high level player, and that hurt Georgia tackle position. Really caused him issues all year long. And right when you thought that they were getting it together and Freeling was doing his thing, then he had a terrible playoff game, and he's going to be spending all off season with that in his head. Another tackle that I would not be surprised in the mix would be Ja Jackson, and he is that huge human, 6'9", over 300 pounds, just gigantic, and he just came on the scene late and like a project. But projects don't make the second string. Don't make
very rarely.
Deep, and start getting in there early. And so that just tells you what they think of him. So Jaw Jackson, he's a huge tackle prospect.
Biggest since Isaiah Wilson, right? Biggest guy since Isaiah Wilson. Yeah,
he was a basketball player, very good power forward type basketball player, could dominate on the court. Mm-hmm. And apparently that translates to the football field, the athleticism.
Obviously.
And he's got great feet and great potential. So those are the folks I feel like Georgia's going to, and I know it, they're going to use those guys to hopefully make some corrections and come back next year with a much more technical team and a much more physical team with Gunnar Stockton at the helm. They're going to need to run the ball, and they had one of the worst rushing seasons they've had under Kirby Smart.
Yeah, I've had this stat right here for that. 84th in the country in yards per carry this past season. That is not Georgia.
Well, and you just don't know if they just said, okay, well, we're going to sink or swim with based on what we saw in Beck's last season, that this year he was going to take the next level, and they were going to let him be the Heisman Trophy guy. They put it all on him, and he couldn't because of his own deficiencies and because of the offensive line. And so I never thought they made the commitment to run the ball the way they needed to. And that was from the line of scrimmage and the running backs, but felt like it was mostly on the line of scrimmage because Georgia's got a lot of talent, even though they had the injuries. But Nate Frazier and ETN, both very talented, and they – or are capable of much, much more. Both those guys coming back next year. So hopefully the offensive line vastly improves, and we see that Searles is a really good coach, not just a good recruiter. So hopefully he makes his money next year. He probably makes close to $1 million a year, about $900,000 I thought I saw. So he's paid really well to do a good job. And Kirby's got some. He's one of the main coaches people talk about. Smooch. They just want immediate action from a Coach Smart. You need to get a new offensive line coach, get a new offensive coordinator.
They need heads to roll. That's that's how armchair people think they're diagnosing the team. I'm going to tell you, here's all I want to see out of the offensive line. I want them to be nasty again. They just weren't nasty this year. I want a few more penalties. I want a few more hands to the face. I want a few more personal fouls. I really do.
They got to move people. They got to move people.
Got to move people. I want them to be so ornery and so aggressive this year, and just show them what a dog's offensive line looks like. We never quite got there this year
because the talent and the size. I mean, we got some big boys, and even if we look at it and say, well, we're just not recruiting that well on offensive line. Oh, my friend, there are so many teams that rather like to trade places with Georgia's offensive line room because lots of gigantic humans and very talented people who move really well too. So that'll sort itself out. I just hope for a much better product next year, and I think that's going to be a focal point. It's kind of felt like coming into the year that was taken for granted. Oh, our offensive line best in the country. Yeah. We got the most. I mean, why wouldn't we?
Finalists for the Moore Award. They'll get it done.
The production just would basically the same team just dropped off so much from last year, and many guys and so much talent coming back. We assumed that they would just take it to the next level, just like we thought Beck would. Neither of those things happen. So that's when people say you can make all these predictions on paper. You still got there's preparation and there's actually actual ball games that you have to prove it. And Georgia on those two levels really we're not able to do that. And that's where I circle as the main aspects that if Georgia gets right at offensive line and get their new QB1 gets a full off season, they've got the potential to be really good because they got a lot of defense coming back. There's guys that there were freshmen and sophomore this year defensively that I'm just like crossing my fingers that there's so much talent that we recruited in the past 2 or 3 years that I just want them to stay. You're going to get to see some of those guys in this coming season. So that's going to be a lot of fun to see those new guys who are 4- and 5-star players get their time to get in the rotation.
Yeah, absolutely. This season, we had regression at the quarterback position. We had regression at the offensive line, and we had, I would say, attrition at the wide receiver position. Wide receivers didn't really regress. They just weren't used to being the go-to guys, right? You lost Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. That's attrition. Carson Beck regressed. Now, I want to tell you this, fans. there are reasons Carson Beck regressed that have zero to do with who the offensive coordinator is. Very much so. See the what they call the U video that was recently shown. I mean, there's reasons for Carson Beck's regression. There's reasons for the offensive line regressions that are not the fault of Stacy Searles. You can find it. You can even say a large portion was injury and at one point illness even. So I want to see those two areas righted. And one of the interesting storylines, Troop, and we'll touch on this, I guess, in an upcoming episode, is that a position of weakness this year, which was receiver, is turning into a position of strength as we speak. And that's been a neat thing to witness.
Yes, we'll definitely cover that because it's going to be a long off season, and we'll cover that ad nauseum. All those position groups. We are excited about the receiver position. We've got the transfer portal. Coach Smart has attacked the transfer portal, and we even had word that Damon Wilson, and I think this is more common that I understood, and a lot of us understood, that maybe they have a buyout. They're putting buyouts on some of these NIL contracts, so they don't just lose out. You know, people just can't take the money and run somewhere else. There's going to be a buyout. The player has to pay, or the other team has to pay, or the other NIL collective has to pay. And I heard that maybe it was a little too stiff for Ohio State's taste for Damon Wilson. So
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, there's got to be some fallout. I mean, there's got to be some kind of something. These guys that are paying this money, these NIL and these rich boosters, all these guys with money that love the Dogs, they don't get that money. They don't get wealthy just by giving money away with no way to reroute it back to their accounts if things don't go right. So
yeah, we're not renting players. We're trying to purchase players. As bad as that sounds. We do want to
ask you folks to check out our YouTube. Our YouTube is going really well, and we're doing a 3-part series, if you haven't heard, on Bobo's Fault. We did the first episode this weekend, and great reviews on that. We got the new one's coming out in just a few days. Where we maybe do pin the blame on Bobo, and we look at some of those plays. Coach Hayes breaking down the plays to give us some solid evidence based on, or to base our opinions off of. And then we'll do another episode with the conclusion. Those are just pretty much just YouTube because we are breaking down plays, but don't forget to look us up at the Dog Show Pod on YouTube and join in. Lots of conversation on there as well.
Absolutely. We are posting the audio from those on all of the Spotify, Apple, all that. Yeah. But you'll hear there's large segments of film breakdown. You probably will need the visual aid.
Yeah, you want to see that.
You want to see that.
Nobody better than Coach Hayes.
None.
For my money, there's nobody better doing it than Coach Hayes. Such a great communicator and such a great teacher and a football mind. And we'll get back on YouTube with him in just a couple of days. Anything else you want to close with, Smooch? Just a little short, quick hitter here.
No, it's great. It's great. Just great to touch base with you guys again. This is where our minds are right now. You can hear how we're kind of laying it out. We're going to talk on. We've got a long off season, guys. So there's a lot you want us to talk about. I assure you, we're going to talk about every bit of it. But breaking this down into a very small segment, because the idea, we have not spoken of Gunner offensive line really at all since the season ended. So we wanted to give you guys that today.
Yes, sir. All right. We'll talk to you in a few days. For Smooch Moncrief, this is Troop Brinson.
This is the Dog Show with Troop and Smooch.
It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show.